Today we're going to be talking about some of the best releases and moves that all short wide receivers need to do. Now the first two releases we're going to be going over for short wide receivers, then we'll get into some stuff at the top of the route and other things that you need to know as a short player. We're going to be talking about a split release and then a slide release, which I think are two essential releases for shorter wide receivers because it's a way to utilize your base so you don't get knocked off balance, but also to utilize like space, something I call range, to not get like jammed by a DB or a bigger, more physical DB, because I think that's the thing shorter guys struggle with, is going up against bigger physical guys. So let's say this is the line of scrimmage right here, and let's say this is the DB who's like head up press right in front of me, right? So obviously in press, DB's goal is to get hands, to disrupt timing on the route, to throw me off my route, to disrupt spacing on certain plays, and we obviously don't want to let him do that, right? If I could avoid, not necessarily avoid, but I guess combat the hands off the line of scrimmage and maintain spacing and timing with my quarterback, I did my job, right? Our separation is going to come at the top of the route. Off the line of scrimmage is about keeping timing with the QB and spacing on the route, not getting forced all the way to the sideline, right? So first release we're going to be going over, like I said, is a split release. So a split release is where your front foot goes out and your back foot goes up, right? So if you split like this. So the reason why we do this is because now you have a base. If this guy's going to get physical and try to get hands off the line of scrimmage, at least I have this like balanced position where he's not going to completely knock me off my route, and I have a lower center of gravity. Now the mistake a lot of guys will make on this release is they'll pop straight up, and when you do that, you're completely screwed, especially if you're a smaller guy. So that split release is something you could do and release inside, release outside, depending on the DB's coverage. Now, the next release is going to be something called a slide release, which is what you would do when you have a DB who's like inside shade, but he's bigger, physical dude. Obviously, you don't want to, as a shorter guy, go into him and try to get into his frame and attack his leverage, because what's he probably going to do? Get hands, and if he's bigger and stronger than me, that's not the game. I want to beat him with range, aka space, and also speed and quickness. So the slide release, you come off the ball, you are going to slide at like a 45-degree angle off the ball. Now the reason why we do this is because if he wants to get hands on us, he's going to have to come to us, right? Now if he wants to sit to the inside and doesn't want to come to us, we could just take off and then release to the outside and go. So if you're a shorter guy, I recommend not trying to attack the leverage of a DB. I recommend trying to work to the outside. He holds to the inside because maybe he expects you to cut back in, but if he does hold, take off. If he does lunge at you, that means he's off of his platform and off of his base, and we could still take off and go. So those are two easy releases short wide receivers can use. Now also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver or a quarterback and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we're traveling out to 15 different locations across the US for 2-day long QB and wide receiver training camp. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you'd like some more information on how you could sign up. We're going to be coming out to San Francisco, California. That camp is completely sold out. We are totally full, and all these camps I'm about to list will sell out, you guys. We're coming out to Orlando, Florida after that, Phoenix, Arizona, Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, Newark, New Jersey, Birmingham, Alabama, Houston, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, Columbus, Ohio, Boise, Idaho, and finishing it off in Los Angeles, California. So guys, want some more information, want to learn how you can sign up, again, very first link in that description below. Now, as a shorter wide receiver, you are usually lined up out of the slot, right? And so when you're out of the slot, you're going to have like a linebacker, you know, maybe a strong safety rolled down, who's maybe about like 3 to 4 yards off of you, inside shade, right in front of you. And as a receiver, especially a shorter guy, you can't be afraid of contact, but you should try to avoid contact as much as you can by utilizing a concept called range. And we briefly talked about this with the first two press releases that we discussed, just not in this situation. So let's say this cone right here is the linebacker and this is the line of scrimmage, right? So what I got to do, let's say I got to run like a 10-yard corner, for example, right? If this guy's like a little bit inside shade of me, I don't want to just take off and try to run away from him and avoid, because this guy's entire job is to sit in his zone, which will be like a hook to curl zone, or maybe he's playing the flats, but he's going to try to get hands on us and reroute us, because that reroute and knocking me off my route like pattern in a sense screws up the timing with the QB. So that's his goal. So as a receiver, I can't be afraid of that. I can't try to run around him. What I want to do is I want to go to him, but I want to leave about a yard, maybe a yard and a half of space in between me and this linebacker. That's called range. That means you are out of his range. If he wants to get hands on you, he's going to have to come at you. So you come at him, you leave a little bit of range, you make your move, and then you get up into your route. Because again, usually a linebacker, a strong safety, maybe they're not as quick as like a corner on the outside. So you got to utilize our quickness and our speed as a shorter guy to get space. So make sure when you're closing space to the DB, leave yourself some room so we can separate. Now, like we briefly mentioned in that last clip, you guys, as a shorter wide receiver, you got to have some speed and you got to have some quickness. I think I get a lot of questions from a lot of receivers about technique things, like, am I big enough to play? Am I this? Am I that? And sometimes I'll get a question like, hey, I'm a short and slow wide receiver, how can I be successful? And honestly, guys, those two things do not gel. You look at all the top like shorter players in the NFL, in the history of the NFL, they all have some type of speed and some type of quickness. You look at a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's only like 5'9", fastest guy in the NFL, obviously. A guy like Julian Edelman, maybe not the fastest guy, but he definitely had some quickness. So that's the way that you can separate and be able to still have success from a size standpoint if you're undersized, right? Now, there are three things you could do to work on your speed. Number one, I would say training with resistance. So running with a sled, running with a parachute, running up hills, running up stadium stairs, that could absolutely help with our speed. Number two, I suggest getting a running coach, because a lot of athletes don't understand you have terrible running form. Like you're running and your knees are, your toes are pointed down, your arms are flattening out, you're doing all this weird stuff with your foot strike. Like a coach who could correct that and fix those problems is going to be super beneficial for your athleticism as a whole and also your route running as a whole if you have good running mechanics. And last but not least, doing explosive movements in the gym, box jumps, Olympic lifts, something that's going to exert all-out effort, because sprinting is an all-out effort movement. If we're trying to run a route, we're exerting all-out effort, and that's activating something in your body called a fast twitch muscle fiber. So you have to train those fast twitch fibers in the gym by doing explosive movements that use all-out effort. So if you can do those three things as a shorter guy, trust me, you're gonna get faster on the field and you're gonna have an easier time separating from DBs and linebackers. Now, the next thing you have to have as a shorter wide receiver to be successful is great hands. I think, with shorter guys, like kind of the critique is obviously, like how well is he gonna do with like press, how well is he gonna do with like bigger physical guys, but also going over the middle, having to catch a ball and take a shot, that's a tough thing to do, you guys, as a shorter dude, so you've got to have great hands. And there's a couple analogies that I'll give to receivers that will help them improve their hands. You can think about every time you touch the field. You got a quarterback throwing to you, these analogies should be on repeat in your head. First one, I tell my receivers, pretend your eyes are a camera and you're trying to take a photo of the ball. So ball is thrown to you, bam, I'm trying to take a snapshot, picture with my eyes, and then put this thing away. Number two, what I'll tell guys to focus on is the white stripe of the ball. So if you look at that white stripe and you see that white stripe when it makes contact with your hands, those are two easy things that you could think about while you're practicing. So in an actual game scenario, it's just easy. It's a habit because of how many reps we have put in at that specific like thought process. So now when I'm going over the middle, I look this thing in, put it away, and even if I take a shot, I'm still gonna be able to hang on to that ball.